Down goes Frazier.
Hey, what's up with it, family? It's your boy Hot Boxing Minute, your favorite pharmaceutical engineer, turned boxing analyst, back at you with that uncut realness. Before we begin anything, hit that like button. At the very least, it helps the algorithm. We got us a fight coming up this weekend, a return of the Chechenian monster Artur Beterbiev, or I guess you call it the Dagestani monster. Depending on geographically how you want to look at that part of the world. Either way, he has a thick Russian accent when he speaks, and he's based out of Canada. It's going down this weekend, Saturday, January 13th, at the Center Videotron in Quebec, out there in lovely, beautiful, I'm sure it's ice cold Canada. And the main thing that this is supposed to be the build-up for is for the undisputed light heavyweight championship fight, hopefully between Artur Beterbiev and, of course, Dimitri Bivol. They've been talking about doing that out there in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. But first, the man who earned the right to be in this position, Callum Smith, a name that we are not unfamiliar with. First off, we got to talk about Artur Beterbiev. Easily one of the scariest human beings in the boxing game. The man knocks people out, and he has what you call a 100% knockout to win ratio, which means he's knocking people the hell out.
To this day.
And if there is one thing I know about boxing fans, it doesn't matter whether you are the most high-tech boxing fan and you're a super boxing history snob, or you could be just some regular yokel-duckle that only knows who Canelo and Tank is. The one thing all boxing fans have in common that they love is knockouts. And that man, Artur Beterbiev, yes, folks, he delivers the knockouts.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained? Is that why you are here?
Now, Artur Beterbiev, for those of you who don't know, he had a super deep amateur pedigree, won multiple international competitions. He was in the 2012 Olympics. I believe he lost to, it might have been Alexander Usyk. I'm not sure. I do know he did beat Michael Hunter competing in the heavyweight division, which really is kind of odd. He's only 6 foot tall with a 73-inch reach. But the one thing that you really want to key in on with that deep amateur pedigree, because he's got like over 100 amateur fights, is that he can box, even though he is most famous for knocking people the hell out. He won his title. When did he win his first title, actually? Ever since he won his first title, he's just been hell in a half. Well, okay, he beat Enrico Colli out in California, and this was in 2017. And he did end up getting knocked out by Callum Johnson in 2018. He unified the WBC light heavyweight strap against Alexander Volstik. Alexander Volstik was a highly vaulted talent, and Alexander Volstik actually ended up retiring for a little bit after that nasty beatdown he took at the hands of Artur Beterbiev. And Alexander Volstik was a man who was what most would term a boxer-puncher. Very quick on his feet, very confident behind that jab. Artur Beterbiev broke him down. There was the infamous fight in 2021 where he fought Marcus Brown. For those of you that don't remember, Marcus Brown, trained by Derek James, kind of famous or infamous for butting people in their heads. He busted open, goodness, what's that one fella's name that was signed to Mayweather Boxing? Badu Jack. And sure enough, once the pressure got thick, Marcus Brown ended up busting open the forehead of Artur Beterbiev. And one of the most iconic pictures some of you might remember is Artur Beterbiev draped in blood, just looking all funky, and he still ended up beating down Marcus Brown and getting the knockout by the 9th round. His last fight was Joe Smith Jr. This was last June of 2022. No, actually, January of 2023, he fought Anthony Yarde. Before that, in 2022, he knocked out Joe Smith Jr., a friend of the channel's. I've interviewed Joe Smith. I know his coach personally, and he mauled Joe Smith Jr. Anthony Yarde put up a relatively decent fight against him before eventually getting stopped in the 8th round. We have seen all kinds of fighters go up against Artur Beterbiev. We've seen the boxers, guys who stay on their back foot, stay behind that jab. We saw Joe Smith Jr., who is a very, very heavy-handed guy, just try to go heads up with him and bang it out tough with him. Artur Beterbiev is there to hurt you. He's there to smash you. He is there to totally eliminate you. He is a very solemn, quiet, soft-spoken fella, very deeply religious in his Islamic faith, and he is just a tough nut to crack. He's 40 years old. 40 years old. He only has 19 professional fights, but it's a very, very strong 40, folks. Like Bernard Hopkins type of strong. The man lives like a monk. As far as I know, according to his assistant trainer, who is, goodness, I'm forgetting the fellow's name. He's all really active on Twitter, but his main coach is Mark Ramsey, but his assistant trainer, oh goodness, the Iceman John Scully. Sorry, Iceman John Scully. He basically says he's never actually seen Artur Beterbiev like go out to a club or go out to a bar. He's not even sure if Artur Beterbiev is ever drinking alcohol. So this is the kind of person that Callum Smith is up against. So 100% knockout to win ratio. Artur Beterbiev, we know what he's bringing. He's got one of the most craziest heavy-handed jabs, and he doesn't punch fast. So it looks deceptively slow, but as unusually slow as it looks, nobody's been able to figure it out. And that jab, it's a strong, solid piston-like jab. He develops everything behind the jab, and Artur Beterbiev can knock you out with either hand. He can throw a hook, he can throw a straight, he can throw an uppercut from the left or the right hand, and he's liable to knock you out. He's fighting Callum Smith. Callum Smith's record is 29-1 with 21 knockouts. He's got the advantage in the height and the reach department. I like Callum Smith. I was always high on Callum Smith. I think he's, for years, been one of the most talented guys from out there in the UK waters. He's 6'3" with a 78-inch reach, so he's got Artur Beterbiev by 3 inches in height and about 5 inches in reach. The thing about Callum Smith in that reach, though, is he has shown in the past that he isn't the best at keeping people at the end of his reach. Some of you might remember his fight with Canelo Alvarez. Canelo Alvarez just kind of walked him down and beat the crap out of him for 12 rounds. So that reach is that reach. But when he is fighting lesser competition than someone like Canelo, Callum Smith is a force to be reckoned with. Callum Smith really showed up on my radar during the World Boxing Super Series. I know for most UK fans, his big thing was knocking out Rocky Fielding. Drink. But for me, I love the World Boxing Super Series. I wish we had more of those kind of events in boxing, y'all. World Boxing Super Series was so awesome. That introduced me to Naoya Inoue. It really got me to know Nonito Donaire. I got to know Andre Ward and what he was capable of. Josh Taylor. So many good fighters came out of that World Boxing Super Series. And amongst them was Callum Smith. He ended up knocking out George Groves, who was riding high off a win off of Chris Eubank Jr. And, of course, those huge stadium fights with Carl Froch a few years prior to that. But seeing Callum Smith perform in that World Boxing Super Series is what put him on my radar. And I thought he was going to do a lot better against Canelo than he did. He got beat down over the course of 12 rounds, but then he ended up going up to 175 pounds after that. So he competed most of that part of the career in the 168-pound division. He ended up even becoming the unified champion in the super middleweight, not unified. He had the WBA and the ring. And he moved up in 2021 and had his first fight at light heavyweight against Lenin Castillo, tough Dominican guy. Lenin Castillo went the whole distance and had a very entertaining and kind of competitive fight with Dimitri Bivol, the division rival to Artur Beterbiev. And holy Christ, Callum Smith hit that dude, Lenin Castillo, with a right hand and sent Lenin Castillo into convulsions. And this was Callum Smith's first fight at 175 pounds. So that's an impressive way to make your entrance into a new division. So I think for a lot of people, seeing Callum Smith knock out Lenin Castillo, a guy that went the whole distance with Dimitri Bivol, it was kind of eye-opening. You came to realize that maybe Callum Smith should have been at 175 this whole time. With a 6'3" frame. And then he fights Matteo Beterbiev about a year later, and he ends up knocking him out with a left hook. So he's very comfortable in light heavyweight, and it seems that he's like an unstoppable power juggernaut at 175 pounds. Now, will that translate into success against Artur Beterbiev? We're about to find out on this Saturday. Boxing community, what do you think? How do you think that fight plays out between Artur Beterbiev and Callum Smith? Let me know in the comments section, y'all. Let's chop that one up. I think the key to success for Callum Smith is to not lose his cool. What Callum Smith does really well is catch and shoot. He's a counterpuncher. Although not a counterpuncher to the degree with the kind of power that Canelo has or shot selection, he's a good counterpuncher. The problem is, Artur Beterbiev is going to be relentlessly applying pressure, and Artur Beterbiev is like an avalanche or a boulder going downhill. He just gains more and more momentum, and the force of those punches gradually breaks you down. And Artur Beterbiev will find whatever angle he needs to punch you from, and it's awkward ones, and he's got a crazy overhand right. Will Callum Smith stay calm and not lose focus as Artur Beterbiev starts to bear down that pressure on him? The interesting thing about Callum Smith is he does tend to make himself real small. His defense, in my opinion, is kind of leaky. It's like a high guard. Not quite as high guard as or as effective a high guard as his brother Liam Smith, but it's decent enough. But in his most recent fight against Matthew Beterbiev, he did show that he can get popped. And Matthew Beterbiev, thank goodness for Callum Smith, is not a heavy-handed puncher. So that worked to Callum Smith's advantage. For Artur Beterbiev, the key for him to win is to cut the ring off, because I'm pretty sure Callum Smith is going to try to use his length, try to use his youth, and use his legs to not really engage too much with Artur Beterbiev. At 40 years old, your best bet is to try to do what Marcus Brown did. Take him out into deeper waters if you can. If you can survive the onslaught, you want to get a guy like Artur Beterbiev out to rounds 9, 10, 11, 12. That's when you might be likely to get the most damage done. So if Callum Smith can somehow stay calm and drag Artur Beterbiev out to deep waters, he's got a shot at winning this. But the odds are against Callum Smith, because Artur Beterbiev is a monster. But I'm always up for an upset in the apple cart. Of course, Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, His Excellency Turks Al-Sheikh is very interested in seeing that light heavyweight undisputed fight between Artur Beterbiev and Dimitri Bivol. So who knows if Callum Smith is going to be the guy to upset the apple cart. The upsetting of apple carts seems to be a constant theme in boxing, especially in these last couple of weeks. We had the Day of Reckoning out there in Riyadh, for those of you that don't remember. Originally, that fight card was supposed to be a setup for an Anthony Joshua versus Deontay Wilder fight, right? And we've been wanting to see Anthony Joshua versus Deontay Wilder for years.
To this day.
And turns out that wasn't what was in the plans for Joseph Parker. Joseph Parker upset the apple cart, and he ended up defeating Deontay Wilder, which kind of dashed the plans for Anthony Joshua versus Deontay Wilder.
Man, this is some bullshit.
It's all right. These things happen in boxing. I love a good upset because it messes up everyone's plans. And it's like kind of punk rock when the upsets happen. Most recently, this past weekend, we had Ismael Barroso with the shocking first-round knockout of O'Hara Davies. That was a shocker because, of course, everything was kind of put in place on Golden Boys, and they acquired O'Hara Davies. They just signed Jose Ramirez. They just picked up Arnold Barbosa. They got Ryan Garcia, a stacked 140-pound roster. The idea was to acquire that eliminator to get access to Rolly Romero, because they want to set up a fight between Ryan Garcia and Rolly Romero. What do we do now that Ismael Barroso knocked out O'Hara Davies in the first round? Upset of the apple cart. So it's not totally unbelievable or impossible for another upset to happen. Even before that, you had Rafa Divino Espinoza upset Robesi Ramirez in that crazy cliffhanger of a fight. So Callum Smith, I don't put it past him to win against Artur Beterbiev, but I'm not so confident in that one, y'all. I'm not so confident. I think destiny has it that we're going to get to see Artur Beterbiev versus Dimitri Bivol in a fight. Drink. So the co-main, or maybe it's the undercard, I'm not sure if it is a championship fight, the WBO Bantamweight strap. One half of the dynamic duo twin brothers from down under, Jason Maloney, will be defending his WBO Bantamweight strap against Saul the Beast Sanchez, a young man based out of Southern California. Is based out of Pacoima, California, trains under Manny Robles. Jason Maloney, I like the Maloney brothers. They're pretty much road warriors who will fight whoever, whenever. Jason Maloney's current record is 26-2 with 19 knockouts. Little dudes, bantamweights, 5'5" with a 67-inch reach. His first attempt at a strap was against Naoya Inoue in 2020. Some of you might remember it was a brutal, vicious knockout. took the dust off his shoulders, got back up on the horse, did it again, and got some pretty high-profile wins in the bantamweight division over Aston Palicte and Vincent Astrolabio, two Filipinos. And now he's in a position now where he won that vacant strap against Vincent Astrolabio in a decision match, a unanimous decision win against Vincent Astrolabio. And now he's doing the first defense of his WBO bantamweight strap. His opponent's going to be Saul Sanchez. His record is 20-2 with 12 knockouts, so he doesn't have as much experience per se as Jason Maloney does, but physically he matches the same description, 5'5", 66-inch reach, so not too much of an advantage for either of them in the physical department. Although, you do got to raise your eyebrow at the idea of Manny Robles training Saul Sanchez. Manny Robles has been on a tear as a trainer. For those who don't know, Manny Robles is an OG. He has trained Oscar Valdez. He guided Oscar Valdez to his first few titles. Andy Ruiz Jr. Oh, goodness. He was the one that recently got Rafa Espinoza to win over Robesi Ramirez. He helped guide Ramla Ali in her rematch against Yulisa Guzman into a win. So Manny Robles is riding a wave of confidence right now. Manny Robles kind of teaches a volume-centric approach to applying pressure, cutting off the ring. Kind of the, I wouldn't say stereotypical Mexican style, but it's definitely centered around cutting the ring off, sticking behind your jab, and applying volume to gradually break an opponent down. Jason Maloney, I like Jason Maloney. He's trained by Angelo Hyder, who is an Australian boxing legend. Shout out to the country down under. Australia's been pumping out these weird champions, man. Jael Pataya, Tim Tszyu. Now you got Jason Maloney. Jason Maloney is a very intelligent boxer with puncher features. He can fight on the front foot. He can fight on the back foot. His catch and shoot game is impeccable. He definitely will try to match you blow for blow and is great at counterpunching. Saul Sanchez is a heavy-handed dude that likes to cut the ring off and likes to punch you hard. His most recent fights were on club-level events. He really hasn't done nothing major. His last fight was on the undercard to a John Riel Casimero event out there in Japan, a unanimous decision win over a Filipino fighter by the name of R.V. Deniega. And if there is an upset that might go down this weekend, it might be that Saul Sanchez against Jason Maloney card, folks. If you're gambling, I don't know what the odds are, but I'm pretty sure Jason Maloney is the betting odds favorite. But I wouldn't put it past Saul the Beast Sanchez to pull off the upset in that fight. The other fights going down on that fight card, nothing that I'm really too interested in. A lot of Canadian fighters. Wilkins Mateo versus TBA to be announced. Moreno Fendero versus Victor Hugo Flores. Leila Bodian versus Elizabeth Chavez Espinoza. Mehmet Yunal versus Dragan Lepe. Christopher Guerrero versus Sergio Garcia Herrera. Imam Katayev versus Rodolfo Gomez Jr. And the other card that has my interest, on the other matchup that has my interest on this card, Christian Mbili versus Rohan Murdoch. Christian Mbili, he comes out of the same camp as Artur Beterbiev. They're both trained under Mark Ramsey out there in Canada. Christian Mbili's fun. He is kind of like a damaging truck force of nature that just plants his weight down in his feet real heavy and he tries to fly your head off. His most recent win was pretty much ending the career of Damon Nicholson, and he did it in spectacular fashion. Before that, he had a fun shootout with Carlos Gongora. So if I were you, I'd keep an eye on Christian Mbili. He's ranked within the top 5, if not the number 1 ranked contender in all 4 of those sanctioning bodies in the super middleweight division. Hopefully we get to see Christian Mbili against maybe a David Morrell or a David Benavidez in the future, a Caleb Plant. He's up there. Rohan Murdoch, relatively unknown, coming out of Australia. I know he got knocked out by Zach Parker. Zach Parker was the one that had the hand injury in the fight with John Ryder, which resulted in John Ryder getting the fight with Canelo Alvarez. So that fight, at the very least, I think it's going to be a showcase for Christian Mbili. So if you like seeing utter destruction, you're going to want to watch Christian Mbili. Tough guy from France, based out of Canada, now training with Mark Ramsey. That dude Christian Mbili is explosive to say the least. So let me know what you think about Jason Maloney versus Saul Sanchez, folks. Does Saul Sanchez have a chance to pull off an upset? Let me know in the comments section, y'all. Let's chop this one up. Anyways, y'all, I'm going to end this video there. I just wanted to talk about that quick fight card. It's going to be airing on DAZN, so You want to check that out this Saturday. Anyways, I'm going to end the video there, y'all. This is Hot Boxing Minute, the future of boxing analysis on YouTube and TikTok. Thank you for joining me, y'all. Until the next time. Peace.